What's up, guys? It's Keaton and Kalani, and today was the release of the 2022 Subaru BRZ. So today we're just going to talk about our thoughts and you know what we were expecting, what we got, and we'll just start it from there. So Keaton, what are your thoughts of when you first saw it?
Uh, when I first saw it, I kind of had mixed feelings about it. As I've looked more through it, have. It's grown on me a little bit. I'm not going to say I love it yet. I'm not going to say I hate it at all because, well, we'll get into the stuff I like and dislike about it. But the stuff I dislike about it is stuff that I've ended up loving on cars that I hated when they were first released. So we'll see how it turns out when I get to see one in person. How do you like it?
Honestly, when I first saw it, I absolutely hated it. But
That's fair.
But to be fair, I hated our first generation BRZs for the longest time. And then
Yep.
all of a sudden something switched and I absolutely loved it. And pretty much that whole thing took place within like the first 10 minutes of me seeing it. I absolutely hated it and then I started liking it.
Yeah, yeah. There are definitely some things that I really like about it that we'll get into. But to start, it didn't get a turbo, which
Yeah.
I personally am a fan of. I don't think it should have one, which is maybe a bit of an unpopular take, but I think if you are worried about the straight line speed of that car, you don't know how to drive it.
Yeah. My feelings exactly. I mean, like, a whole bunch of people I know are all like, "Oh, well, if the Subaru BRZ gets a turbo, then I'll have to look at buying one." And, you know, they're driving cars that aren't known for really any sort of performance at all, and they're saying that, and they aren't realizing that this car isn't made for straight line speed. It's made for, cornering performance and stuff like that.
And it is, I mean, even the outgoing models are fantastic for that, especially if you put 2 grand in suspension and wheels and tires on it. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
But while it didn't get a turbo, they are losing the 2-liter FA20 for the 2.4-liter Subaru Boxer engine, and it gets bumped from 205 horsepower in your model years, 200 in mine, to 228. And they gave it 15% more torque for 184 foot-pounds of torque, which is still pretty low numbers, but I don't have any issues with the power on mine. So I think it'll be good.
Yeah. I think it's a good decision. And also, once we get closer to the interior and the dashboard and everything, I saw a picture of the one little dyno graph on the dash, and it shows that
Yeah, and
there's
it,
no
it
torque dip
looks like the
now.
torque curve is gone. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, so that's interesting.
I think that it'll be real interesting when we finally are able to do test drives and stuff with it because, uh, on our cars, you can really feel the torque dip. And I feel like if they have successfully gotten rid of that, then the drivability of the car will go up and it won't feel so sluggish.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I kind of want to clarify my stance on the whole turbo thing because as you know, no one that watches this channel likely knows. But as you know, I've looked pretty extensively at turboing mine, and
So have I.
someday it likely will happen. But the point of the car is not straight line speed. Even with a turbo, it's not straight line speed. I'm not going to complain about it having more power, but I think in stock form, naturally aspirated is definitely the way to go. I I just like, wow, words. But there are just so many cars at this point that have turbos, and most of them are super tiny turbos that are basically useless once you like actually start, like the Civic Si, for example, is a 1.5 liter with the tiniest turbo you've ever seen in your life.
Or
Yeah,
like
how
the
much power are you going to
Veloster.
get out of that 1.5 liter? Yeah. Yeah, and like obviously you're not going to get a ton more out of driving a naturally aspirated engine, but there is something to be about the enjoyment of naturally aspirated engines, especially if the torque dip is actually gone and it's actually completely linear everywhere, which
Yeah.
hopefully it will be. And it'll also be interesting to see what the compression ratio of this engine is, because if you're looking at turbos aftermarket, this engine might be a lot better, and a lot of people might end up swapping it. So that'll be interesting to see. Because I'm sure besides that, most of the turbo kits that we already have are going to bolt right up to it. Because there's a couple things that I think have changed with the chassis, but the overall layout of the engine bay looks exactly the same, minus that if you zoom in, it looks like the sound tube that goes to the interior might be gone.
Yeah, and that would be actually really nice because that has no point in any performance or anything. It's just if you've got a stock exhaust and it makes it have a little throaty sound when you floor it. And I'm not a fan
Right.
of, yeah, throaty. And I'm personally not a fan of noise generators unless you consider an exhaust a noise generator. Then I love those. But ones that don't give any sort of, performance gains, I think they're kind of useless. So if they actually did get rid of that, I think that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I would agree with you. But if we move on from the engine and get into more of what actually separates it from my car and your car, for reference, if you don't know, I have a 2013 and Kalani has a 2017 performance pack. But this new 2022 model, it's a little bit heavier. Obviously, the 2.4 liter, the bigger engine doesn't help with that, but it has 50% increased torsional rigidity and 60% increased front lateral rigidity. So it should be a much stiffer car from factory, which will be very interesting once people start putting coilovers and stuff on it. Because as Kalani knows, I have not the expensive coilovers in the world, and they're set up well for what they are, and they're pretty soft. But if I have my sway bars set on the stiffest setting, they're still stiff enough to where if I'm driving on the street, the back end will start bouncing if I take corners too fast and it's not a completely smooth corner. So it'll be interesting to see if these are significantly more uncomfortable to ride in once they're lowered.
Yeah, I mean, with my coilover and sway bar setup as well, I also noticed that stiffer may not actually be better, partially because with my uh, with my sway bar setup, I had it as stiff as possible, and I've got 8K springs front and rear, and I don't know if it's just a Subaru BRZ 86 type thing, but I broke one of my sway bar end links. I think
Oh
Keaton
yeah,
has
so
also
did
done
I.
that,
So did I. I broke one in the rear,
but that was
but
also when you were set to your stiffest setting as well, right?
it was.
Yeah, so I'll have to. I already have the part for it. I just need to switch it out. But I think I think it being that stiff may cause problems down the line for aftermarket parts because it won't be the type of deal where companies can just go, oh, we've got our aftermarket support for the current generation BRZ 86, we can just slightly update it and be just fine. I think that they might have to, really take a look at, okay, if we put the current technology that we have and spring rates and stuff like that into this car, is it going to make it too stiff and, have it affect the drivability?
Yeah. Uh, but the chassis flexing less may lead to the suspension working more. We'll just have to see. That's diving too much into stuff that I don't completely know about. But
Yeah, I
to be
agree with that.
fair, it will handle better stock, and on the track, stiffer can be better, but most of what we do is not track driving these things. So on the street, there's definitely a limit. On the track, there's definitely a limit as well. But stiffer can lead to better on the track.
Yeah,
And
and I don't know if you included this, but it also has a lower center of gravity compared to
I
our.
don't remember if I did, but it does, which is rather impressive because they have pretty low centers of gravity. It's
Yeah,
also supposed to keep about the same weight distribution and be as close to 50-50. They didn't say exact numbers, which makes me wonder if it's like 51-49 and they just didn't want to say that it's not exactly 50-50. But either
yeah,
way, it'll be good. The previous BRZs were good, and this car essentially just seems like a rebodied version of those that's a little bit stiffer at this point.
yeah. And I agree with that. They said something like near perfect weight distribution, if I remember
Yeah.
right, which makes me think it's not 50-50 because if you looked at the the Miatas and stuff like that, they're always going, oh, 50-50 weight distribution, haha, on all of their
Yeah.
reveals and all that. So it kind of makes me feel like it may not have a perfect 50-50, but it's pretty close if they did say a near perfect. So it might be 51 or 52 or something very close to 50-50, but not actually 50-50.
Yeah. And then if we move on to the next bit of their release here, the safety technology is being brought into the BRZ. And as I say that, you may know my thoughts on it, but from my understanding, I saw it might have been Redline Car Reviews in their video. They said that that stuff will only come in the automatic, which makes sense because you can't really have pre-collision braking and a stick shift and not risk it just stalling out in the middle of the road and then you getting slammed into from behind. Because what they're talking about right now, it'll have Subaru's eyesight, which I experienced when I had a Forester Sport loaner car when my car was getting the valve spring recall done. And honestly, I hated it. Hated it. I hate anti-collision braking systems because when like you're driving behind someone, they're gonna turn right into the shopping center that's coming right up. So they start braking, and you're coming up behind them, and they're gonna be out of your way before you get there. Like with the speed they're going, with the speed you're going, it's just gonna work out. You're not gonna hit them. But the car decides that you're going to slam into them and absolutely slams on the brakes and A, scares the crap out of you, but B, it makes the people behind you almost rear end you. So definitely has its pros and cons, but the one big pro of eyesight, in my opinion, is that it means it'll end up coming with adaptive cruise control. And while I hate the anti-collision braking, adaptive cruise control is a godsend. It
Oh
is
yeah.
fantastic. I'm not gonna say I'd be a fan of a car that drives itself yet, but uh, but whatever it's called, good lord, I lost it. The adaptive cruise control is pretty solid. I used it when I drove up to deposit my application into the school that you were going to. I used it the whole way up, and that's like a 3 hour drive.
Yeah.
Wonderful, made it so much easier.
Yeah, I kind of had an experience like that a couple years ago when I was going from Phoenix to Tucson in a RAV4 that had the lane assist and the adaptive cruise control, and it was like I think 11 at night, and there was only a couple people on the road, and I just adaptive cruise controlled it and just barely pinched the wheel so that it knew that I was still alive, and it basically drove itself the whole way down, and it was actually really nice. But
Yeah, so
also, if you look at the bottom of that little sentence that they got for the Subaru safety technology, it says enhanced roadside assistance and automatic collision notifications, and yeah, it doesn't mention if it's going to be on manual or automatic, but I also did see that it was only for the automatics, which I think is kind of good because, if say if one of us did get one of these, I personally think that it wouldn't be appropriate to have all of those sensors and everything on the manual version because that's more
Yeah.
of a performance oriented one where you know you're going to be pushing it closer to its limits where those those sensors and stuff might not like that and might do some weird stuff.
Yeah, they might, depending on what all's going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, with you saying that, I think it's quite likely both of us will end up with one of these at some point. I think it's probably gonna happen. But yeah, that stuff is kind of up to personal preference. But the people that get a car just to drive it, well, like just to get from point A to point B, and they want something that looks cool, they'll definitely appreciate those safety features. I think Subaru will sell a lot that has them. But I
Yeah.
think the people that are really into driving and spirited driving won't want a car with that. But those people get the manual anyway, so if it doesn't come in the manual, it's just not going to matter anyway.
Yeah, and I think that the whole decision to put in those safety technologies might come from the fact that, you know, they're trying to make it a little bit less of a niche market
Yeah,
where, someone that might have been looking at buying one of the automatic BRZs like the first gens, they might have bought it if it did have the safety technology, but didn't because there were other cars closer to that price range that did have it. So I think that for sales and stuff like that, I think it is a smarter move to include that for automatic models because the people that want it for the performance are obviously going to get the manual version. And I agree with you, the people that just want something that looks kind of cool, that are just going to use it as a daily driver to be stuck in traffic with, they would definitely want that safety technology.
yeah, I definitely agree that it's a smart sales. It's like when they put the automatic in the WRX. Of course, all the car people hate it, but Subaru's selling a crap ton of WRXs now.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah, it's kind
if
of
it
one of
works,
those
it
things
works with
where,
Subaru.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind of one
like
of those things where, the car people might not like it, but for sales models and everything, it's a no-brainer.
yeah, yeah. They just better keep the manuals.
Yeah.
That's all I say.
Yeah.
And yeah, another interesting thing is they finally got rid of the terrible 17-inch wheels if you get the limited package. I've upgraded it to an 18-inch that actually doesn't look too bad from the side. It still looks like it doesn't fit completely right, which is kind of sad considering how bad the past two models were, even with the performance pack. But they are also coming with Michelin Pilot Sport 4s because people were complaining about how bad the other tires were. Thank God, because they were awful.
Yeah. I mean, you've got experiences with those stock tires when you slid off
I
the
do.
road.
Yeah, I do